Hi everyone, I'm Cory Anotado, the executive producer of Tell Us About Yourself, conversations with game show contestants. Our first season has come to a close, and our host Christian Carrion is taking a well-deserved break. He'll be back in the new year with new episodes of the podcast. Meanwhile, I'll be replaying some of our favorite episodes, giving you a chance to listen again to some of the greatest stories we have from the stars of your favorite game shows, the contestants. We couldn't do this without your help, so we appreciate you listening and supporting the podcast. We also could not have done this without the support of the National Archives of Game Show History at the Strong National Museum of Play. The National Archives of Game Show History at the Strong preserves the history of game shows, from the earliest panel shows and quiz scandals, to the games and puzzles of the 1970s, to the Big Money Network series, and the classic games now in prime time. You can learn more about the archives or the museum itself at their website, museumofplay.org. We would also appreciate if you visited our Patreon page. You can support the podcast for as little as $1 per month. You can check that out and more at patreon.com/packdo. Now, without further ado, here's an encore episode of Tell Us About Yourself, conversations with game show contestants.
Tell us about yourself, would you?
Tell us something about you.
For any new viewers, why don't you tell us again about yourself?
We've met before, but let's meet again. Tell us about
What
yourself.
else can you tell us about yourself?
Perhaps you'd fill us in again and tell us about yourself.
It takes one to know one. It's a common playground expression. When someone says something to you, you can flip it right back at them and imply that they know exactly what they're talking about because of first-hand experience. As a playground insult, 2 out of 10. As the quality of a podcast host, invaluable. And that's why Christian Carrion is such a great podcast host for Tell Us About Yourself, conversations with game show contestants. Because, as you'll soon find out, it takes one to know one. Christian Carrion, tell us about yourself.
My name is Christian Carrion. I am 33 years old. I am originally from West Haven, Connecticut, currently living in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I'm a hotel manager. And in the past 15 years, I've been a contestant on 6 game shows. On the strength of several of those appearances, I've had the opportunity to work with the Strong National Museum of Play, the National Archives of Game Show History. I'm also the news editor for the most popular game show website in the world, BuzzerBlog.com. And a whole lot of other things that I never thought 5-year-old me would be able to ever do.
Well, let's start with our first question. Who do you think you are? What gives you the right?
Nothing gives. If I could answer that question seriously, nothing gives me the right. Absolutely nothing, and I never forget that. So I was at one point. I was a very shameless self-promoter, and I used to be kind of full of piss and vinegar when it came to talking about myself. Now it's mostly piss.
Yeah. The older we get, the more the balance of piss and vinegar kind of.
It's so true, and they say you have to like. Yeah, they say you have to be like really good at promoting, and I'm good to a certain degree, but if you see me on shows like a decade ago, I'm very much not that person anymore. I like to think I've mellowed out a little bit to my own benefit.
Well, let's start at the beginning. You were born at a very young age.
So
And-
some sources say 0.
Oh, incredible. So let's start there. When you're born, are you 0 years old? Or should you start at 1, like in some cultures?
Well, I'm thinking about it like a stopwatch, right?
Okay.
That starts at like 00, and you have to hit the button in order for it to start counting up.
Okay. Oh, that makes
So
sense.
and I mean, if you break down time, right, you
Mhm.
can be, 1 nanosecond old. So I guess there is a tiny, tiny, tiny moment when you're 0.
We've already destroyed most arguments for conception and life and all that. So this podcast is off to a good start. Love it. So I think everyone who's been listening to this podcast, they know who you are. They know that you are you're a fanatical game show lover. So let's start talking about that. What's your first memory of game shows?
The first ever memory of game shows that I have,
Mhm.
I must have been, well, thinking about it, must have been 2 or 3 years old. It was a show called Trump Card. I
Oof.
remember seeing a split second of Trump Card, and I remember the very like gold and glitzy set. That's what I remember. And I don't know if I saw a commercial or if I saw the show itself, but that's my first solid memory of television. And again, it's just a fleeting sort of moment, but all of my other TV memories sort of skip to ages 4 and 5. And I grew up on the USA Network and the Family Channel, because before Game Show Network, USA and Family Channel, those were the game show networks. And from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., it was all reruns of, Name That Tune and Press Your Luck and Pyramid and a lot of the shows from the 80s that weren't even all that vintage at that point. They had just been out of syndication, for a few years. So they were still relatively new, relatively current. I grew up on that. And, I've said it a few times. My father was a high school art teacher. And when he was out during the day, I was home with my mom. And what my mom watched was game shows up until Days of Our Lives. And then it was game shows again. Right. And so that's what I grew up on. And I mean, like you, right? Like I fell in love with it at a very early age. Just something drew me to it.
Yeah, we have a very similar story in that. When I was that age, I was also being watched by a maternal figure, in this case, my grandmother, because she worked nights at a hospital, and she would, from morning, she'd watch Regis and Kathy Lee, and then from then on, she'd switch over to Family Feud, Price is Right, and then cable in the afternoon. So it was a very heavy stream of game shows, pretty much all day. So we have very similar backgrounds in that regards.
And it's funny because, early 90s we're in an era of trash TV. And daytime TV in general has never really gotten a whole lot of respect. We're at, I think, an all-time low when it comes to, the talk shows and the relationship shows and the courtroom shows and all that fluff that's on, in daytime TV in the early 90s. My parents never seemed to have a concern that I was watching too much of this stuff. And I think that maybe it's because education was a primary consideration in my house growing up, because my dad was a teacher, because my dad was really interested in having me learn how to read as soon as possible, learn how to speak and use my words and communicate ideas and thoughts and creativity as soon as possible. I think that they saw a lot of the educational value in the stuff that I was watching. Also, it was a Jeopardy household as well. And that goes back to even before me. My dad was a Jeopardy watcher, and he continued that even as I was growing up. So, we had Jeopardy on in the house every night. But even the stuff other than Jeopardy, they just, to their credit, they saw some value in it. They saw some value in an area of television that it's sometimes, depending at the angle depending on the angle at which you look at it, hard to see value in it. You know what I mean? It could look
yeah.
like a lot of lights and music and fluff and laughing and silliness, but there was definitely something there that I gravitated towards, because I grew up loving words and loving trivia and loving Scrabble and that's how I learned how to read. My dad put Scrabble tiles in front of me, and I used to move them around and make words, and it was a really, again, to his credit, like a really tactile way to learn how to put words together, put sounds together. What do these letters do together?
It's interesting that you bring up like your parental influence on this, because I think parents are pretty keen on what their kids like. They may not understand it, but they at least, any good involved parent is going to notice what their kids are ingesting. Did your parents, while you were growing up, did they do anything to actively encourage your love of game shows, outside of just allowing you to watch them?
They did, and a few things come to mind. First of all, when I was growing up, Saturdays were tag sale days, and that's what they call garage sales in Connecticut. I don't know if they call them tag sales in any other part of the country, but they were called tag sales. And we would go to whatever tag sales we'd see. We just drive around our neighborhood and the neighboring towns and look for signs, follow the arrows, and buy what they had. My parents always had their eye out for, home versions of game shows. So all the Wheel of Fortune board games I had at some point, even games that I had never seen or even understood how they worked. I was 5-6 years old. I had, the $1 million chance of a lifetime, the home version. Again, had no idea how to play. The material was way above my head at that age, but I just loved having, that's one of the first opportunities to own a piece of a game show, right? That's like the first,
Right.
That's the entry point into, owning a physical representation of the stuff you watch on TV. So it was that. I had like the High Rollers home game. Again, the choking hazard is like tailor written for me at that age, but it was fun to just have it and look at it and look at the picture of Wink Martindale on the cover and read the questions, and again, not even know what it was about. So my parents always had their eye open for that kind of thing. Whenever something new game show related came out, I would have it. I was by no means a privileged or well-off child at all. But when these things made themselves available, my dad just sort of had an eye for it. And then years later, my dad built me, actually, well, we did it together. We built the Wheel of Fortune, and he found like, it must have been a small, like unfinished coffee tabletop. It was round. He found it at Home Depot, and we drilled a hole in it. We used a big, it must have been like the size of my palm back then, but like a coat button was the center of the wheel. My dad drilled a hole into it, put a screw through it. We put a dowel on a big round wooden thing behind it so that we could hang it up, and we did nails around it. And I used Sharpie markers, and I built the layout of the wheel, hung it up in my room, and I'd spin it all the time. I spun it to the point where the paint behind that screw that was holding the wheel in was wearing the paint down in a sort of like letter U shape, because it would swing back and forth, as it spun. Right. And that was my favorite toy for a really long time. And I'm finding that I'm using the phrase "to their credit" very often, because I'm realizing in retrospect that they encouraged my love of this thing in ways that they had to think about. They had to go outside the box and think of ways to encourage this thing in me. And so, to his credit, my dad let that be a thing that we did together. And it was not only a way to express how I felt about this type of TV, but it was also a creative outlet. I got to draw. I got to learn how to use woodworking tools. I got to learn, how all that stuff worked. And then, a major thing that happened in my life was my introduction to public access TV.
One of the unique things about your story that I know is that your dad is basically New Haven's Bob Ross.
Yeah, essentially. And it happened out of nowhere. My dad had gone into like a little Black-owned bookstore that had just opened in West Haven. And back in the day, West Haven was, disproportionately Italian. It was just, we were absolutely the minority. And West Haven, growing up, West Haven was racist in a lot of ways. The first year that my parents lived in West Haven before I was born, I don't know if it was next door neighbors or neighbors set their car on fire when they moved into the neighborhood. It was,
oh my God.
Yeah, it was like that. And so to see a minority owned business open up and it be a bookstore, I think somehow it endeared my dad. And he walked in and met the owner, and there was a big room in the back where there was just a lot of wall space. And it was a little stage set up. Like maybe at some point they had tried to do puppet shows, or they had tried to do some kind of, after school thing where they were presenting to kids. And my dad said, I could do art lessons here. And my dad had just gotten let go from his teaching job. And so he was looking for something to do. We spent the previous summer delivering pizzas and listening to Thriller on cassette. That was like just
nice.
Monumental memories of my childhood. So he was looking for something to do, and the owner loved it. And so they facilitated it. They set it up, and he was doing art lessons for kids after school. At the same time, the owner, her name was Bev, she had met the executive director of Citizens Television, which is the public access channel that served the greater New Haven area. And it's still around today. If you Google CTV, they're still around. They're still on YouTube and all that. And so she had this interest in promoting the bookstore on public access. At the same time, my dad found out that they offer an 8-week course. And it's a course that would teach a person every element of studio production. So 1 week it was how to mic somebody up and how to run the audio board. The second week was how to operate the cameras. They had 3, three television cameras. The next week was, how to generate graphics, how to operate the switcher, how to, they had an Amiga that was powering their graphic generator. And then the last week was nonlinear video editing. And so by the end of that, you were what they call a certified producer for CTV, which meant you could put on your own show.
Oh, wow.
My dad signed me up so fast, and we did the class together. And, it's funny because at that point I didn't even know how to ride a bike. So this was the equivalent of me learning how to ride a bike with my dad, which I also got to do later on. But this is what that was for me. It was learning a skill that at that point in my life I felt, could take me anywhere. I still feel that way. And just learning it alongside him, and then eventually getting to do an art instructional show. So those lessons that my dad was doing at the bookstore, one day the executive director of the station came to the bookstore and brought a camcorder and asked my dad to teach to the camera the way he would to somebody in the after school program. So he did. My dad taught a very simple drawing thing. And the most vivid memory I have of being there is he said, why don't you go and grab your pencil and we'll be right back. And the executive director turned off the camera and said, this is too good. We have to go to the studio. And the rest is history. We did Mr. Fred's Palette for about 7 or 8 years. It was 2 Saturdays a month live. It was a call-in show. I was running the cameras. I was running the switcher. I was the director. I was the everything. And we did so many incredible things in that studio. We had a local underground wrestling league or wrestling, whatever you call it. They set up their mattresses in the studio and had an event, and my dad was on the side drawing them as they tackled each other into these big dirty mattresses in the studio. We drove motorcycles through the hallway. We did all kinds of incredible things, and it was, looking back, it was the kind of TV that I'm fascinated with these days. And I got to make it. And I got to make it with my dad. Like, even before all of this game show stuff happened, like that was such a formative experience. And it really taught me a lot. And being able to experience TV at that age from that angle, I just felt like I and my dad, to his credit, primed me for a lot of the stuff that's happening in my life right now. It all started in public access.
How old were you when this was happening?
When I took the class, I was 13. I had turned 14 during the class. So by the time I was done, I was at that point. I don't know if it's been surpassed, but I was the youngest producer there. And then being a producer meant that you were able to help other people on their shows. And so one of the shows that I used to help out on was I forget the name of it. It might have been I think it was called The Voice of Muhammad, or no, Muhammad Speaks was the name, and then local chapter of the Nation of Islam. So used to put on a show, and this guy, his name was Edwin. Edwin was the speaker, very charismatic speaker, delivered whatever you would call the Muslim equivalent of a sermon, for an hour live. And this guy loved cool camera angles. And so doing his show was like batting practice. It was, it was a simple show. Him at a podium saying what he wanted to say, had people around him. Yes, brother. Yes, make it plain. Make it plain. And all the people behind him, and all the while I am running between 3 cameras and just experimenting. I remember zooming in on the reflection of his face in the sunglasses of one of his security guards. Oh, wow. And I held that shot for a minute, and it was the equivalent of being able to paint. It was like being let loose in a room full of paints and canvas and like wanting to be a painter and just being able to throw anything up there. It was I think about it, and it's like that kind of thing is not bound to happen again. And I think that's good. You know what I mean? A lot of the tools that are used to make video and make TV are more accessible these days than they were back then. You don't have to go take an 8-week class to do this, really. But not only the technical, but the social aspect of it, being around people who liked it, who were into TV and wanted to make good TV. Again, at that age, there was no other outlet for that.
So I just wanted to swing back to this real quick. You said you were about 13, and I would say like 13 to 16 when you're doing all this.
Correct. We stopped, I think, we did the last one when I was 18, right after The Price is Right. We did our last episode kind of unofficially after that.
When the hell did you learn how to ride a bike? And I say this fully not knowing how to ride a bike at all. But
I learned to ride a bike when I turned 14. I had no idea how to ride a bike. I had a Razor scooter.
Sure.
And I was usually on foot. I was trading Pokemon cards on Smith Street. It was all by foot. I was on the corner like a dealer. And so for my 14th birthday, I had all my friends over. A girl from across the street sang Selena and karaoke for everybody, and then probably fell down the stairs because she had these 3-inch high like cloghopper sandals on. But one of the most vivid memories of that afternoon was my dad wheeling out a bike for me for my birthday. And I said, I don't know how to. It was beautiful. It was amazing. I never seen a bike like that. It was like a mongoose. It had disc brakes. And I said, I've never seen a bike like that. And then my immediate thought was, I don't know how to ride this. And my dad said, no, I'm going to teach you. And so we every day for about 2 weeks at 6 p.m. we'd go to the church about 3 blocks away, and we'd practice. And he'd teach me how to ride a bike in the parking lot. And that's how I learned. I just never really got around to it. I was focused on a lot of other stuff up until 14, and once I got a bike, I put pegs in the back, and I was giving girls rides, and it was amazing.
I like that your experience growing up is definitely a Lin-Manuel Miranda in the Heights vignette.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's incredible how on the nose it is.
Well, West Haven, and I was very lucky to have been growing up in West Haven at that time because, as a person of color, there weren't a lot of people like me. There weren't a lot of people who looked like me. There weren't a lot of people who understood Spanish. I didn't grow up. I grew up with my parents speaking Spanish in the house, but I never really learned it. I know a little bit now,
right?
And I understand it almost fluently. But I feel very fortunate to have grown up at that in West Haven during that period where the demographics are changing. There are all of a sudden a lot more Latinos in West Haven, and my little neighborhood was just so soulful and so vibrant and so like beautifully loud, and so that definitely, that contributed to my childhood. I grew up in a really cool little neighborhood that just had so many characters and so much color and so much like soul.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. I keep going back to stuff because I have really great questions for you. So here's a great question for you. What is art?
Art to me is something that inspires thought or discussion or sadness or laughter or anger. The idea that a physical object can produce an emotional reaction in somebody is, if you think about it, kind of a miracle. It's kind of crazy that you can pick up a pen or pick up a pencil or pick up a laptop and iMovie or Final Cut, which is what we're using back then, and create something that can make another human feel something. That's it's like nothing short of miraculous. And so growing up around a lot of visual art, a lot of paintings, a lot of charcoal drawings, a lot of, quote unquote traditional art, I think enabled me to have a greater appreciation for art as a whole. Art is something that can be created. It's something, it's also naturally occurring. You know what I mean? There have been moments in my life where things come full circle, where people who had entered my life previously that I didn't necessarily have an understanding of why they were there. Years later, their purpose becomes known. To me, that's art. To me, that's a beautiful, naturally occurring piece of art.
Mm-hmm. Are game shows art?
I would say so. I mean, one of the things about growing up and getting older and having a more nuanced understanding of the entertainment that you digest is that you realize that it's a product like anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So in all of the conversations I've had, not only with contestants, but people, in the industry, because I've been working with you in BuzzerBlog for almost a decade now. One of the things that comes to mind is the idea that there's not always a beautiful, creative, artistic reason for the way a producer will do something on a show. There's not always a story behind a set change or a story behind why this is said this way and this thing is said another way. And it's a part of learning about TV that, if you look at it the wrong way, could like take the magic away from it. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Everybody's out to make a living. This is those people's jobs. The way that my job now is, managing a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you meet people like Bob Bowden. You meet people like Mark Wahlberg. You meet people like Randy West. You meet people like Bob Barker. People who take this consumer product and elevate it to the point of art, where there is so much love and so much passion and so much science and creativity and passion that goes into what they do for this consumer product. And that, it's hard, at least it's hard for me to not justify that as art, as, those people being artists. Because at the end of the day, they are creating something that, although it's intended for a mass market and it's definitely a consumer product, a television program, it does create joy. It creates, it elicits emotion, and it inspires. So I would say absolutely, good game shows are art. I would qualify that. Good game shows are art for sure.
That's not what I have on the card. I'm sorry.
Well, I had a good time. I came with nothing. Damn you and your soundboard. It's like doing a podcast in the box at Yankee Stadium. Give me a little bit of charge. Boop, 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 boop.
I can give you crickets.
Yeah, that's about right.
All these things I use in meetings at work.
I love it.
No, but I think you raise an excellent point. I think I mean, from an artistic perspective, like Michael Graves, for instance, industrial designer, did a lot of stuff for Target in like the 90s, 2000s. It would be very hard pressed to say that the things that he made weren't art, but they were also mass produced for Target. So there can be art in a capitalist structure like television or commerce.
Oh, for sure. It's all about the passion that goes into it, I think, at the end of the day, because to say that art is the opposite of consumer material would not be
Right.
true, wouldn't be genuine. It's all about the passion that goes into it. And people like me, people like you, people like the people we know, they know a good game show when they see it. The qualities are there, and the love is there, and the ingenuity is there, and the passion is there. So yeah, I think that's true.
Well, I think we can start to segue now into your illustrious game show career, and I want to quickly go over the big ones.
My lawyer specifically told you not to use the word illustrious. I know
sorry.
You got the memo.
I'm sorry. You're right. Let's. Oh yes, here's the note. Let's talk about you being on TV a whole bunch.
That's right, because nothing in which somebody's won a sofa has ever been described as illustrious.
That's a good point. I mean, look, I know that sofa. I've been on that sofa.
You have been on that sofa.
It's a nice sofa. It's a nice sofa.
It is.
It was.
It was. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
God rest in
peace. Well, because I would like. You've been on some of the most popular game shows in television history, and then you have been on some stinkers.
Oh yeah.
So I really, because of what today is when we release this, I really want to talk about the stinkers a whole lot.
Sure.
But I would be remiss as an agent of the National Archives of Game Show History at the Strong Museum of Play. So let's start at the top. What's the first game show you ever auditioned for?
The first game show I ever auditioned for, I wasn't even old enough to be on the show.
So you were 5 years old?
No, I think I was either 14 or 15.
Okay.
And my dad had learned in the newspaper that Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was doing what they call walk-in and win week.
Oh.
Where for a week of shows, instead of auditions and tests and stuff, they call people out of the audience like The Price is Right. Everybody has a number. They call a number, and the person with that number gets to play the game.
Wow.
You have to be 18 or older to get on a damn game show. And I was not 18. But my dad, to his credit, made it a field trip and said, let's go and let's get as far as we can get before they realize you're not old enough. Let's just go experience that. So my dad drove us from our home in Connecticut to New York City to the Javits Center. And there were a couple thousand people, and we waited in line, and we went in, and there was a cardboard cutout of Meredith Vieira, and everybody was getting super hyped to, go see the show. Because the thing was, they process you at the Javits Center, then they put you on a bus, and they bring you to ABC over on, I think it's on 55th.
Right.
And there's where you see the show. And so that was my first experience being in a game show audition. And even to call it an audition wasn't a whole lot, because there wasn't any, there was no criteria. You just needed to be a person with an ID. Right. And we made it up to the point where there was the table in front of the bus, and they were taking everyone's driver's licenses.
Ooh.
And we got up there, and my dad and I kind of feigned forgetfulness and said, oh, I just realized I don't know if I'm old enough to do this. I said, oh, well, that's okay. And so that was my first experience at a game show audition. The first one I ever straight auditioned for, I think The Price is Right was the first one I ever auditioned for because I had just turned 18 years old.
Yeah.
And so that was the first one I ever tried out for. Yeah, that was it.
Well, look at you, get in line and go see Bob Barker.
I had only been 18 for 6 days by the time I taped that show.
You know, most people when they just turn 18 and go to Los Angeles, they do end up on a couch. You ended up with a couch.
That is very true. I am subversive like that.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but the story that is oft told through history is you turned 18 and you asked your parents for tickets to California so that you could go on The Price is Right. You didn't ask them for hotel money, rental car money. Well, you're 18, you can't rent a car. But you don't ask them for anything except plane tickets, and then you schlep off to LA, you sleep on the sidewalk, you turn tricks for Jack in the Box money, and you get to Television City, and you're running on caffeine and hopes and dreams, and they pick you to be one of the contestants on Bob Barker's last season of The Price is Right.
So let me go back and correct. Yeah, so I'll go back and correct a little bit.
Okay.
I was actually turning tricks for Little Caesars money.
It's hot and ready. It doesn't have to be good.
That's right, which was also my nickname when I was turning tricks.
Little Caesar. That's a weird name, but
That's right. So yeah, that is pretty much it. I found out in October of 06 that Bob Barker was retiring. His last show would be taped in June. And I also knew that I was turning 18 next year with just enough time to spare that I could maybe get in there and do it. And I only asked my parents for the airfare because I knew that to see The Price is Right in person, all you have to do is send a request along with the number of tickets and the date you wish to attend, along with a self-addressed stamped envelope to Tickets, The Price is Right, CBS Television City, 7800 Beverly Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90036. And so I knew for a fact that once they put me, God, thank you so much for that. That I felt like the man for a second, Corey. Thank you for that.
Glad I could help.
Beautiful. I just knew that if they gave me the infrastructure, I could make it happen. I had been watching the show all my life. I had been reading about the show all my life. I've been learning about the show all my life. I knew how it worked, where it was, what to do, what not to do. And my parents got me the airfare. And that was my first time on an airplane. That was my first time on the West Coast. That was my first time going to see a game show, because even when I did the Millionaire thing when I was little, I didn't get to go to the studio. I got to go to the Javits Center, and then we went home. It was a first for a lot of things in my life. And so May 15th, 2007 was the tape date. That was a Tuesday. I had landed at LAX on Saturday because I knew this is Bob Barker's last month. The line, which is usually 300 or 400 people long, is going to be thousands of people.
Sure.
Because if you ever read the fine print on an old school TV ticket, it will always say ticket distribution is in excess of studio capacity. So they'll let 300 people in, but they'll give out 3,000 tickets, no problem, if they have them. And so I got there 3 days early, and I remember getting off the plane at LAX, trying to get a bus from where I was at the airport to Fairfax, to the farmer's market. And I got on the wrong bus, and I had to do a lot of walking, which was fine because I grew up walking. I grew up taking the bus. I grew up on public transport and getting myself where I needed to go, whether it's by bike or bus or whatever. And I've always liked taking trips that way and, seeing the real side of where I was. And so I remember getting on that bus though. And one of the first conversations I had in California was with the bus driver. And she said, you don't look like you're from around here. And I said, I just flew in from Connecticut. I'm here to see The Price is Right. And I think I'm going to have to sleep in line to do it because I'm 3 days early. and she said, "You better be careful. They will steal your shoes out here." And it scared the shit out of me.
Sure.
That you know, and for a moment, I wondered if I was in over my head. But I pulled the rope on the bus at, I don't remember where I was, but I was a good 2 miles away from where I needed to be, and I walked the whole way. And eventually, you know, this phenomenon would repeat itself with various objects and locations and situations throughout my life. But as I'm walking, suddenly CBS Television City just appears in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's almost like in Tony Hawk, how when you're really far away from a building and you get up close, it kind of fades into view. Yeah.
Fog, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what happened. There's a big apartment building and then CBS. And all of a sudden it kicked in. I said, I know this. I've seen this. This is just this looks just the way it does in the manual. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I walked the length of the building, rounded the corner, and I saw the security gate with the entrance to let people in. And I said, well, this is it. And I sat down on the pavement. And that's when the waiting began.
And that was a smart move you did to wear your shoes down by walking 2 miles in Los Angeles. So
that's
no
right.
one would want to take them.
Rendered them undesirable. Well, and honestly, all I had with me, I had that one pair of shoes. I had the one pair of pants. I had a few changes of shirt. I had an original Game Boy with Tetris.
Nice.
I had an iPod Shuffle, and I had a track phone. I had like a burner phone, and that's what I was keeping. And I was texting the girl that I had taken to prom the year prior.
Mm-hmm.
And tell, hey, I'm in Los Angeles now. Hey, I'm at the studio now. You know, just trying to flex. You know,
lose my number.
And eventually, well, she probably should have at that point in my life. But eventually, like, that kind of faded away because I had started meeting all these people in line. Mm-hmm. You know, the first day I was by myself. Mm-hmm. I was the only one there, and a security guard came out at one point and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm in line for The Price is Right." And he shook his head no. And I said, "Why are you saying no?" And he said, "You know goddamn well that old white man don't give a fuck about you."
He's not wrong.
He said that Bob Barker is home sleeping right now. He don't care that you're in line. And I said, duly noted. Thank you so much. Yeah. I'm going to continue waiting here. And so they don't tell you how cold Los Angeles gets.
No, it's very deserty, like hot in the direct sun, but there's no humidity.
No, there isn't. And I did not, you know, I guess I went based on what I assumed to be true about Los Angeles. It's always nice. It's always sunny. It's always 70. But as soon as the sun goes down, it got to be like 35, 40 degrees. And I was outside. I didn't bring a hoodie. I didn't bring a jacket. I had a Nike backpack and a t-shirt and jeans and sneakers. That's what I wore. And so I eventually that first night had to layer up with all the changes of t-shirt I brought with me, including the one I was going to wear to the show. My dad had, and you can't tell in the footage these days because VHS doesn't age very well, but on my shirt is a drawing of Bob Barker and the logo that my dad did with Sharpie.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and you can't really tell. It's kind of like lost to time. My parents still have it in storage somewhere, but
nice.
But it was that shirt and all the other ones I just had to like layer on myself to stay warm. And it was like the next day that the people started kind of trickling into line. It was like, there was this one autistic boy who had also just turned 18 that was there with his mom that was super excited to see the show. There was a family from Virginia that had a hotel room across the way at the Farmer's Daughter Hotel, which is right across the street from CBS. Mm-hmm. And the one thing all these people had in common was that they loved The Price is Right. So this, again, if we're going to talk about, firsts, this is the first time that I had ever been in a room with people who liked this stuff as much as I did. They liked The Price is Right to the degree that they left their homes and flew here to, and none of us are talking about, I hope I get on the show. I mean, it'd be great to do that, right? But at this point, and at this point in Bob Barker's career especially, it's about being there for one of the last shows. It's about seeing, one of the last performances of this thing. And so that was a huge game changer for me. Being able to talk about game shows in real life. This had been an internet only hobby up to this point, and I was not really well versed in talking about the things that interested me in person. And so I found myself kind of stammering over my words and just being so excited to talk to people. And I was taken aback by how nice people were. That first night when I had all my shirts on, I fell asleep eventually because somebody in the apartment building next door brought me down a beach chair to sit on.
Aw.
So I woke up the next morning and there was a white box under my seat. And this was back in the day, so I wasn't really suspicious. I picked it up and there was a note on the top flap that said, "To our Connecticut friend, we were worried about you. See you later today. Love, your friends from Virginia." It was from the family in the hotel across the way, and they had filled the box with pastries and bacon and sausage and all the stuff from the breakfast buffet. They had given me a box of food to hold me for the day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and just little things like that. It was great to be able to report those to my family back home because I know that they were worried. This is a big deal. But
our stupid ass son is going all the way to California to go see an old man on TV, and all he brought with him is a fucking Game Boy.
Right.
Dickhead ain't even buy food.
And an iPod Shuffle. Well, I didn't know. I did buy food. I bought it while I was in line. There's an amazing burrito place across the way from CBS. I don't know if it's there these days, but that's what that's what I'm laughing because you know what? The first time we went to the burrito place, it was like me and two friends I made a line. I said, "Hey, let's go to the burrito place," So we're walking down the line, and at this point, everybody hears that this kid named Christian is first in line. So as I'm walking down the street, people are giving me high fives and shit in the line. We cross the street, I give high fives across the street. We get to the burrito place, and there is a man sitting on a skateboard playing a toy piano in front of the burrito place. And I'm a newbie, so I say, "Hey, I like your piano." And he looks up at me. About 3 seconds of silence goes by. He goes, "Fuck you!"
Yep. Yeah, that's about right for California.
And I went, okay.
Yeah.
And I went in and got my burrito.
California's like that.
Yeah.
It is. We're both East Coast people, and there's enough people in California that just take strange left turns during seemingly odd already conversations.
That was my first time ever learning that.
Nah. One thing I notice about you as a human being is you are never lonely for long.
What do you mean?
You're never alone for long. I'll put it that way. Like, I have seen you go into very isolating or uncomfortable situations where you don't know anyone or maybe very few people. You make yourself at home, and you really get comfortable with people and your surroundings like so easily.
Well, that is a survival skill that I have learned from television. And I can explain that. Growing up, watching the shows that I watched, watching the type of TV that I watched, watching the hosts that I watched, one of the commonalities among all the good game show hosts is that, one, they make these strangers feel right at home immediately. Because any host will tell you that the job is about facilitating entertainment through the vessel of the contestant. The show, unless you're fucking Groucho Marx, is not about you. It's about the people that are there to play your game. And so whether I was realizing it or not, I think I spent years watching game shows and therefore learning a lot of social skills, learning when a conversation has run its course and okay, it's time to go do the thing that we need to do. Learning how to make people feel comfortable by being relatable. Asking questions. What are you about? What are your interests? What do you collect? What do you want to be in the future? are you know what I mean? And just and inserting a little bit of myself into that as well. I remember, and this isn't a game show interaction, it's a regular human interaction. The day I started third grade, I was petrified. I had skipped 2 grades. I was 2 years younger than all my other classmates until I graduated high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so first day of third grade was a biggie because this is the first time I'm starting a new school year in a class of kids older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was petrified.
Sure.
And so I was waiting in line when I was, 6, 7 years old, however old I was then. And the tradition was that you wait out in line in front of the school, and then your new teacher comes out and introduces herself. And our teacher, Miss Galvin, came out and found her students, and she said, "Hi, I'm Miss Galvin. Is everybody here as nervous as I am?" And I just felt this cloak of nervousness like fall off of me. I was like, yeah, I'm really nervous. And it felt so good to admit that because it rendered the fear powerless. Once you acknowledge it, that's it. It doesn't have power over you, because what's scary about situations like that is the unknown. I don't know what I'm walking into. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'll be safe. But those interactions, coupled with the ones that I learned from TV, have kind of shaped this personality of mine where I pride myself on being able to interact with anybody and everybody. To me, that's like a base social skill. Put me anywhere, I can make a friend. And I've told that to Kat so many times too, because I think professionally it helps. It helps working in the industry that I work in hospitality. I mean, you have to be able to make a friend on the fly. You have to be able to put yourself in somebody's shoes at a moment's notice. You have to be able to, empathize and understand and relate and do all those things. And, I credit game shows with 99% of that personal growth that I've been able to make.
Okay, let's fast forward through Price is Right. You got on the show, you won a couch, you have fucked up cover up.
I sure did.
You
I sure did.
Listen, absolutely it.
Once you're on the set and once you're there and you get called, I mean, listen, I'll be damned if I remembered what my phone number was. You know what I mean? Like, it all takes over, and any idea that because we spent the night prior firing off names of pricing games and the strategies. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So firing off, cover up. You mess up the first number so that it guarantees you at least one more chance to put the numbers, because you get another chance if you get at least one right.
Right.
And the car's not going to be a $60,000 car. So put the 6 in there. That'll be wrong, and then do the best you can with the other numbers. Just all of them, just all the strategies. And it's all well and good until you're on the set of the Price is Right. You know what I mean? And it all falls away. So I have no regrets about messing that up. Oh, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this. So I was on the Price is Right, and I made it up during the second to last one bid. So I played the second to last pricing game, which was cover up for a car. Right. So they revealed the car, and I went insane. And the video of that has been on YouTube for years and years, and it circulated Facebook for a long time. It was on MySpace video when that was the thing.
Amazing.
The model that showed off the car, her name was Fire Dawson. Fire was the daughter of Edwin Muhammad, whose Muslim weekly TV show I used to run the camera for back at CTV in New Haven. Isn't that insane?
Are you serious?
We got back and I did his show, and he said, I saw you met my daughter, Fire.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
Cory, that's art. Do you see what I mean?
That
little
is art.
Things like that. That is art. That is the painting of my life being edited by somebody who knows what the fuck they're doing. Do you know?
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I
3,000 miles away, I had that link back to Connecticut.
I don't know how to respond to that. Like, that's flabbergasting.
It was incredible, and I had no idea until I went back to CTV after the whole Price is Right thing had happened, and he told me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yep.
That's not, like you said, the model is Fire Dawson, and I immediately went into any other direction other than the callback to the Nation of Islam guy.
Right.
Amazing.
Right. Little things like that to further elucidate on the answer that I gave you to a question a long time ago. Little things like that is what I see art in, is what I see beauty in.
We talked a little bit about the strategy of The Price is Right. So I learned this a couple weeks ago, and it has made me like furious. Did you know this? Do you know the strategy for coming or going?
Oh, wait a second. Is it something to do with the fact that if there's like a 5.9 in the price, you know it's going, because if you put it backwards, it's 95. Like it's a solid price.
No. So what I've been told is, if you're playing coming or going for a trip, you always pick going, because then you'll be going on that trip. Apparently Bob Barker loved that joke so much, it's one of the unwritten rules of coming or going.
And so that's why it's always going when it's a trip, just to have that.
Yeah.
Right. Just to give him that verbal link so he can say you were going and now you're going to whatever.
Right.
Oh, and small price to pay for a nice little clip. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Oh, that's amazing. I did not know that. That's incredible.
I'm so mad.
Wow.
So Price is Right, life-changing experience, very formative for you. You can ride that story all through college, which I'm sure you did.
Well, yeah, honestly, until something happened a month into my college career that suddenly took the place of that. But
what happened a month into your college?
For a couple years after The Price is Right, I had desperately wanted to get on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Now I was old enough. I was old enough to go to the audition. I was old enough to give them my driver's license or my ID and get processed and do the thing. And Millionaire was a show that fascinated me from really, really young.
Yeah, same.
And I used to, when I was little and I was going to the library and printing stuff out and saving stuff on floppies and bringing it home and just kind of data hoarding game show material. One of the things I used to keep in my pocket was I printed it out. ABC, the official Millionaire page on abc.com, used to keep a running list of contestant names and what they had won. And so I printed it out, taped it together, cut it, and folded it up into like a roll. And I used to keep it in my pocket the way a kid would keep, baseball cards.
Yeah.
They were statistics for a game that I loved. And I used to keep that in my pocket all the time. I was journaling in 7th grade, and one of the prompts one day was, what do you want to do in 10 years? And I drew this detailed, there were no words. I just drew a detailed model of the set of Millionaire. That's what I wanted to do. And I communicated this to everybody around me. And so I really wanted to get on the show. My freshman year of college, I went to Southern Connecticut State. That summer, they had announced that they were doing an online test where instead of taking the train to ABC and taking the test in person, which I had done like 7 times and failed each time, now you could submit a video first. You submit your video audition. If they like you, they will interview you, and then they will send you a link to the test. And so I saw the strategy in this immediately, because I figured, at this point, I'm pretty comfortable with who I am. I'm pretty comfortable talking to strangers. I'm comfortable being a game show contestant. If they like me, I don't imagine why they wouldn't. I could pass the test. The audition is the thing to pass. Being what they want on the show is the thing to pass. Anything else is icing on the cake, because I love trivia. So I submitted my video. I did it in my Walgreens uniform, because I was working at Walgreens at the time. Nice. And I emailed them the video, and they interviewed me by phone for a few minutes, and then they emailed me a link to the test. So I took the test in the computer lab at Southern, and I was in between apartments at the time. My family was moving, and I didn't have a phone because I broke it. It fell out of my pocket and I stepped on it while I was moving the couch that I won on The Price is Right. So I didn't have a number for them to contact me at. So I gave them the number of my then best friend at school at the time. It was a girl named Erin. And we met at orientation, and we were just like inseparable for that first year. And so I gave them her number, and then I texted Erin through my email, and I said, I just took the test for Millionaire. I gave them your phone number. If a New York number calls me, please, or if a New York number calls you, please let me know. And so fast forward to beginning of October, because this was in end of August, beginning of September that I took the test. Fast forward to October, we are paper macheing a giant model dragon for the homecoming. Right. It's me and Aaron and it's a few other people. And we're in this little conference room on campus. We're paper macheing a dragon for the homecoming parade, which is that weekend. This was on a Monday. And while we're, paper macheing, talking shit, Aaron's phone rings. And she looks down and she says 212. And I said, Aaron, that's New York, pick it up. That's New York, pick it up, pick it up. That's New York, pick it up. And she gave me the phone and I picked it up. And I said, hello. And I was shaking. Sure. And I don't remember the conversation, but they asked for me and they said, this is so-and-so from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And I said, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And I jumped out of my seat and everybody, all the girls are screaming around me like, are you kidding me? And I got quiet for a second. And she said, no, I'm not kidding. You're on the show. And I freaked out. I freaked out. And that was on a Monday. They wanted me to tape that Wednesday. So I had 2 days to prep. Millionaire isn't really the kind of show you prep for because they can ask anything. Yeah. And the closest I've ever felt to regret for an appearance on a show comes here because the night before I couldn't sleep. It was like it was like going to bed for Christmas. I just couldn't sleep. I mean, this was the dream that was getting ready to happen to me, and I just couldn't turn my brain off. And so I ended up going to bed at about 2:00 in the morning, woke up at 4 to get dressed and get on the train and have some breakfast, do the thing, and get to ABC at 7 a.m., which is the call time. And waiting backstage, I was falling asleep.
Wow.
These days, you would get, not even joking, you would get sent home. Mm-hmm. They would pull your ass out and they would tell you that if you cannot stay awake for the show, we cannot have you on the show.
Yeah.
And it was just, I guess it was just a different time. But I was still, when I was awake, I was incredibly excited. We were in this green room that was just lined with this wrapping sort of leather couch. And, they gave us a tour of the set and we walked around and saw how small it was. That's all anybody ever, that's the first impression of everybody who goes to see a TV show is how small the set is compared to what it looks like on TV. Yeah. And we spent most of the rest of the time in the green room and big long couch, snacks, they had M&Ms and granola bars and Diet Coke and water and stuff. And there was a big like president phone at the front of the room with a big red light on it. Mm-hmm. And the way it would work was we were isolated. We didn't know what was happening on set while they were doing the show. The phone would ring and the light would go off and it'd go boop, boop, boop. That meant that it was time for another contestant to go up.
Oh.
So we were all hanging out, eating snacks, talking, doing whatever. That phone would go off, that boop, boop, and the room would freeze because it meant, a production assistant would come pick up the phone. They would tell them the name of the next contestant they wanted from the room. They'd hang up and call that person and take them out. So there was a moment where somebody went and did the show, and 10 minutes later, like the thing goes off. So they must have done well and whatever. Another contestant was called. They went out 30 seconds later. Boop, boop. And it scared the hell out of us.
Oh my God.
Did they get the first question wrong? Because that's everybody's fear when they go to be a millionaire. They don't want to be that person that leaves with 0 or gets one of the easy questions wrong. And so that was like a sub game in and of itself. It was nerve wracking. But I was the second contestant on the second, like the first episode of the second batch they did that day. Like by the time I played, it was like 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon. And so This is a situation where I think that I focused on the show rather than the game. I was so taken by my surroundings and I was
Mhm.
so engrossed by the presence of Meredith Vieira and the lights and the music and the chair. I'm sitting in the chair and it just, and not to mention the audience, you're in the round. So all these people are staring at you. It's like one of those things where the guy does surgery in front of like the
Yeah.
audience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've been to Tijuana. I know.
Right. I'll never forget that weekend, Corey, by the way.
Magfest gets crazy.
Sure does. But I got sucked in by the show aspect of it, and I forgot that there's a game. I could,
Yeah.
$1 million was as far within reach for me as it was for anybody else sitting there. So I don't regret how I did on the show.
Mhm.
I won $15,000, and that did a lot for me. It did a lot for me socially. It did a lot for me personally. I bought my first car with it. I went to my first music festival with it. I celebrated. I did what a newly 20-year-old 15,000-aire would do with that money. I got my first laptop with that money. But in terms of my performance, I do wish I had spent more time thinking about the game rather than hamming it up.
Which is really interesting because many people would assume, and I think listening to this podcast week after week, we can all safely put that aside. The notion that if you are a huge game show fan, you know everything Tillin wrote about the game show. And a lot of people don't put into perspective absolutely how crazy the lights kind of make you. I always tell people that no human being can ever truly prepare for being a contestant on a game show because it is an unnatural, it's a very unfriendly environment for a
Yes.
normal human being.
Well, it's not a human climate, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's not meant to withstand vegetation.
Right.
And I'm I learned that in a very real way from a social standpoint, because growing up watching game shows turns you, for better or worse, into a goddamn game show host.
Yeah.
It turns you into that person because, again, and these days I always preface it, for better or worse. I say for better or worse, I learned a lot of my social skills from the type of TV that I watched. Going back to what I was mentioning earlier, it's a double-edged sword, because I think that when you learn all of your social skills from a game show host, it sounds funny, but it's reality. When you learn your social skills from that kind of character,
Yeah.
you don't realize when you're younger it's a character. That's not a real person. Dick Clark isn't that way all the time. Tom Kennedy, Bob Barker are not that way all the time. You take on this sheen of like, well, that's what it is. It's a sheen. It's slick. It's not genuine. And people who aren't indoctrinated by The Price is Right and Press Your Luck reruns pick up on that. And they say, what the hell is his problem? He's, I wonder who the real guy is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
That took a few years to sort of grow out of. And it took, honestly, being in a stable, healthy relationship outside of home to realize that, wow, I think I've been learning a lot of skills that aren't necessarily transferable to the real world. This is not a game show. We're not on a damn game show.
That would explain why every time I'm over your house for dinner and I ask where the bathroom is, you always tell me it's behind door number 1 or door number 2 or door number 3.
If you have to go number 3, I'll call the hospital.
Okay, so we got through The Price is Right. We'll call that a loss. We got through Millionaire. You didn't win $1 million. Let's call that a loss.
I did not. Well, can I really quickly tell you the first thing I did with the 15,000 once it came?
Did you get it in ones and rub it all over your body?
Yes, I did. That's exactly what I did. So the check, oh man, let me tell you how, oh man, listen. This is what I did. First of all, I've mentioned it a few times on other episodes, but they don't pay you until your episode airs because the money that you win on a game show comes from the ad revenue, comes from the fact that it aired, comes from all the contractual obligations that are fulfilled once the show is aired. If it doesn't air, you don't get paid for the most part. Right. So I aired January 30th. About a month later, I got a FedEx envelope in the mail, and it was a check in my name for $15,000. So I called Walmart and I said, I have a check for $15,000. Could you cash this for me?
Go to a bank, you son of a bitch.
And I said, listen, Cory, I was not, this was my Wesley Snipes phase. I was not very good with money. I really had no sense of financial responsibility. I was a college student living at home. I just wanted the cash. I just wanted to feel it. Depositing it. I wanted a stack of paper in my hand. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So they put me on hold, make sure they had enough money, and said, yeah, we got enough money. So I went to Walmart, cashed it at Walmart, got a plastic bag with $14,700 in cash, brought it home, spread it on my bed, rolled around in it.
Living the absolute dream.
Then I took a stack of 20s from the pile, folded it in half, big knot of 20s, put it in my pocket, called all my friends, and I said, meet me at Wendy's. There was a truck stop in a couple towns over that had a 24-hour Wendy's. Mm-hmm. And I invited, must have been about 30 people, all my friends, every friend I knew. And this was it's not pre-Facebook, but it's pre-Facebook being a successful tool with which to facilitate social gatherings. I invited 30 people. I stood at the register at Wendy's, handed each person that came up a $20 bill. They got what they wanted. They gave me the change. I gave the next person a $20 bill. 30 people passed through the line that way. And then I split the change that I had in my pocket among everybody. It was just like it was the dream.
That's magic. That's absolute magic. Also, when you told me you took a stack of 20s to a 24-hour gas station, I got very concerned.
It would not be the first time.
Yes, and it won't be the last. Okay, Millionaire loss, Price is Right loss. Let's talk quickly about Match Game. Because one of the things about Match Game is I think everyone gets it. Like the celebrity environment behind Match Game, it's free-flowing, it's very raucous. Quickly, what was it like being a contestant in front of, I assume, like as someone who grew up watching and loving television, in front of people who you admired?
It was surreal. It was that, honestly, Match Game was probably the most surreal experience I have had as a game show contestant. And I'll tell you the moment that it became real for me. The moment that I felt like I gotten shot into space. When that turntable turns, you're sitting next to your opponent. The podiums are facing the wall of the studio, and you don't turn until Alec Baldwin is on stage and he says, let's meet tonight's contestants. And this thing turns around. You hear the machinery of it. You hear that whirring. You feel yourself being, vaulted to the left. And all of a sudden, all the celebrities come into view. It was like a dream sequence. It was, that was the moment that it just like, where am I right now?
Why were you so bad at Match Game?
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
I've had this discussion before, right?
And I will also preface this with, I'm going to tell everyone what you told me before you got on the show.
I don't think I remember it.
You said, the only thing I want out of this experience is a screenshot of you with the closed captions audience groaning.
That's right. I wanted to get booed, and I wanted that. That's right. You're right. I wanted that shot of me with like my head down, like I said something bad, and just like audience booing.
Yeah.
In parentheses. Yes, that is all I wanted. You're absolutely right. Money was second on that list. But that was, no, you're absolutely right. That is exactly what I wanted. Match Game. And this is going to sound silly. Match Game is a difficult game to play, and it's not difficult to answer the things at home.
Yeah.
It's not difficult to hear the question and go, oh, yeah, banana. You know what I mean? It's not difficult to hear, strawberry blank and go, oh, yeah, shortcake. That's it. That's easy. What makes Match Game difficult is what I think makes Fast Money and Family Feud difficult. It's not necessarily the degree of difficulty of the question, but it's the fact that you're under pressure.
Okay.
Part of what makes Fast Money work is that there's that 15-second timer. You don't have a lot of time to think. And when you're under pressure, it's hard to think and silly things come out. When you have 3 seconds to say, something you squeeze and you go, peanut butter. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I think that that's what Match Game has working for it as well. That it's, again, surreal is the word I used to describe it. The experience of being on set, the experience of having Alec Baldwin in your face with Raven Simone looking on will never not feel like a dream. And so it is hard to take hold of your faculties and, understand what they're asking for in a silly ass Match Game question. So that's why I was bad at it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, also, another thing that, generally speaking, Family Feud and Match Game have in common, you're not playing for the right answer. You're playing for the answers that a nebulous group of people have said.
Well, right. It's subjective. You're trying to match other people. And, how the hell do I know what Wayne Newton is thinking? I mean, we all know what he's thinking, but in that moment,
scientists have asked these questions for decades.
Welcome to Cosmos.
Wayne Newton is made of star stuff. So, okay, you won the main game on Match Game.
Right.
And so you got to the super match.
I should say I won by 1. The score was 1-0. I literally said the word sticky and won the game. It's a difficult game, Corey. It's not made for everybody. Listen, it's
it's high level.
Challenging mental. It is challenging mental exercise.
How helpful in reality are the celebrities when doing the audience match?
When it comes to the first part, they were pretty helpful. If I'm not mistaken, 2 out of 3 of the answers that I got to my fill in the blank, the first part that establishes what you play for in the end.
Right.
I'm pretty sure, it was 2 out of 3 that were up there. They were very helpful. I was more comfortable. All right. My comfort level, if you were to make a quick line graph of it, would have a peak and then a very sudden valley heading into that segment where we do the super match. Once I won the game, I heard a whistle to my left because they put you center stage and somebody comes out and explains what's going to happen next. I heard a whistle to my left, kind of behind me. It's Mario Cantone, and he's complimenting me on my shirt. So I spend about 5 or 10 minutes just leaning on Mario's little podium, talking to him about the thrift game in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And I think about how my social skills have progressed, and I sometimes surprise myself that I was able to just carry on a conversation with a celebrity on a set completely unprompted. And that made me super comfortable. That was the peak.
Wow.
The valley. I come down center stage and there's a production assistant talking to me about what's going to happen next, and there's somebody else putting pancake makeup on me. Mm-hmm. While this production assistant is explaining to me, this is the super match, or this is the part where you get advice from 3 celebrities and they'll give you an answer to a fill in the blank. While she's explaining this, Alec Baldwin, with his microphone, leans into me and leans in as close as he can get without touching my face.
Mm-hmm.
As close as he can get. I counted the pores on this guy's nose. I think only Kim Basinger has been closer to this guy's face. And I said, "That's Alec Baldwin to my right, isn't it?" And she said, "Yes, it is." And then he backed up and we played the super match. I do not understand why he did that. I don't know if there was a reason. I don't know if he was just being silly. I don't know what it was.
Here's your big mistake.
Is it not kissing him?
It's exactly what I was going to say. You should have kissed him.
Oh man, he would have
planted one right on.
He
him.
would have decked. You know what? when I won the main game, I got excited. I ran and hugged him.
Yeah.
They retook that.
Really?
I don't think he wants to be hugged by another man on TV. That's my suspicion. It's not been confirmed, but they did retake that without me hugging him. God forbid I put something on this guy's character that is not supposed to be there. I don't know. I just know that celebrities is weird.
Celebrities is weird.
You know what I mean? So
You're
that's
absolutely right.
and again, God forgive me if he's just being silly. He was just trying to have fun because he liked me. I hope that was the case. But it definitely contributed to the surreality of the experience, having him that close to my face.
So, match game, you didn't win the top prize, loss.
Right.
Millionaire, loss. Price is Right, loss. Let's talk about the chase. How angry are you still?
I was assured that none of this would come up.
I don't know where you heard that from. I wanted to only talk about that. I just wanted to slander Molly for this entire episode, and I was told not to.
It was the same guy who said, "Don't call it illustrious."
Yeah, I took those notes and I put them right into the suggestion box.
The Chase, a show on which I did no losing at all.
You didn't absolutely. You did far better than the paycheck you received for it would have indicated, which I believe was $125, and then a little bit more.
And In-N-Out Burger.
Yeah. Oh, did you use the money for In-N-Out Burger?
No. They gave it to us. Yeah, no, the guy in the van pulled in before he brought us back to it was the Sheraton Universal, but before we went back to the hotel, he did pull in and let us get In-N-Out Burger on their dime. That was pretty neat. Yeah, it was pretty good.
This is one of the few shared game show experiences that we have, which is a very odd statement to say in any regards.
That was an amazing year because it wasn't just you and I. It was a lot of people that we knew, and you and I were commenting on it like we're just running train on Game Show Network. It's amazing.
Yeah,
that was such a fun experience.
It really was. Because I think leading up to that, you and I were both in the same kind of headspace that we were just absolutely gaga over most British game shows anyway.
Right.
But specifically The Chase, we were in love with it.
Yeah, I was torrenting it, and I was watching it during my time off from class in my office at the radio station when I was in college.
Yeah. And so, the experience top to bottom of being on it, I think, was super exciting. But also, I don't know how it was for you, but for me, it's one of the few game shows that I've been on where I really said to myself, nah, I can win this.
I didn't say that. I did not say that, honestly.
Oh, that's good. You banked well on that one.
Yeah, at any point. Because you know what? That was the first. I sure did. That was a safe bet. I sure did. You're right, Corey. That was an exacta. That was, oh man, I should have put money on that. No. This was, I had never really thought about winning the chase because in retrospect, I think I had a good audition. I think I had a good test. Mm-hmm. I don't think at that point, a decade ago, that I was as decent at trivia, at least not good enough to hold my own on a show like The Chase. I think about, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I think about people like you. I think about people like Raj. I think about people like Heather, like Jonathan, who are incredibly adept at general knowledge, at trivia, have been practicing for years. They do Learned Leak. They go to bar trivia. They write their own quizzes. I am nowhere near that caliber of trivia player, nor have I ever been. I enjoy it. I enjoy it as much as somebody who watches game shows likes trivia. From a gameplay standpoint, I was out of my league. And I think I knew that. I think I knew that I didn't think I could beat the beast overall. I thought I could give him a run for his money because I was decent enough, just not anywhere near that level. Yeah. So I never really thought about winning. I thought about the prize being on the show. They had flown me from Connecticut to Los Angeles and got me a hotel room for 2 days. I have a big picture window facing the Hollywood Hills. I'm watching The Simpsons and eating a cheeseburger, looking at Hollywood from the window of my hotel room. I've already fucking won.
Yeah.
And that's honestly how I look at it.
That is how I treated Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Because the exact same things that you said about me, which, by the way, I'm honored, and I have you fooled. Because I too do not, like, there are people who like game shows, and there are people who are good at trivia because they watch game shows, and then there are people who are quizzers. And I am not a quizzer. I am just someone who watches a lot of game shows and remembers a lot of stuff. So the way that you viewed The Chase is the way that I viewed Jeopardy, which is to say, I'm honored to have been I've been honored to be invited here. I'm going to have a very nice time. I'm going to make the most of it. But I'm not going to win this game. And we were both right, which is nice.
We sure were. We sure were right. But I'll be honest, thinking about the experience and having been on the show, first of all, to be able to be on a show that I never thought I would see in person, because again, this is me working at the campus radio station and watching episodes on BitTorrent that were taped in the UK. Having that show come to America and being able to be part of it was amazing. But the biggest thing I took away from it, and I'm not trying to be an ass kiss here, but that's when I got to meet Bob Bowden for the first time.
Yeah.
He did my audition. When I went to New York, it was him in the conference room at the hotel who, I did the test. I passed the test. He was the one that did the in-person interview the next day, like on camera. And being able to meet him even after The Chase, and he flew me back. He flew me in for a second time just to do a sort of like post-game
like a talking head,
credits, right? Just for that, I got another night at the Sheraton. I got another $100 to eat with. I got another flight from Connecticut to Los Angeles, and being able to foster that relationship with somebody who I never thought I would even give me the time of day, was worth more than anything I could have won on The Chase. The experiences that I have been able to experience in my life, if you were to show them to the 13-year-old kid taking the public access producer class, it would blow his mind, and it's because of experiences like I had on The Chase and meeting Bob and just keeping that line of communication open. I mean, that in a very indirect way is the reason why you and I are doing this right this very second.
You're absolutely right. It's a very circuitous route, but we can start it at The Chase and we can end it here, and it's a pretty clear delineation. You're absolutely right.
It's art, man.
It's art. Everything is art, man. I think it's pretty safe to say there's a lot of art.
It really is. There really is.
Okay, so on The Chase, you were in the middle position, right?
Right.
So you see tall Maryland man go up. And
Aaron,
you see
Aaron with one A, if I'm not mistaken.
Aaron.
Yeah.
So you see him go up, and I think he gets one in the cash builder, maybe 0.
Something pathetic.
Yeah. What are you thinking in that moment?
In that moment, I honestly thought, you know what, it's up to me.
Okay.
Because all the while, the production assistants, whoever's assigned to you, they're asking you how you feel about gambling. How do you feel about going for it? How do you feel about taking the big offer? How do you feel about winning the max? How do you feel about putting it all out there? How do you feel? And they're trying to gauge whether you're going to go for the big money or not. And so when I saw that he went for the safe offer, well, first of all, when I saw him do as poorly as he did in the cash builder, and then I saw him go for the safe offer, I said, I need to bring some two things kicked in. One, I need to bring some money home for us so that we have something to play for. Two, I need to rescue this train wreck of a episode. We need to make good TV. And that was honestly something that kicked into my head. I said, I need to give this to them. Let's go for the big money, because otherwise this is going to be a do nothing episode with three people who took the low offers and didn't win. Who cares?
And see, that's you thinking like a game show host.
I guess so. But yeah, that definitely kicked in. I said, I need to make this a good episode. Let's do it.
So you do your cash builder, you get like 4 or 5, which is very good considering the stack that you taped on a Monday, right?
I believe so.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I was tape day 1, I believe.
Yeah.
2, something like that.
I'm pretty sure after that tape day, they went back to the writer's room and said, no, take this down a notch.
Yeah.
Because the questions I had compared to the questions you had were ridiculous. But even so, you have a very respectable cash builder. You go for the high offer, you bring it home. All that money is basically because of you. And then your third teammate goes up and does just as bad, if not worse, in the cash builder compared to your first teammate. And then she also takes the low offer.
Which, I gotta be honest with you, as petty as it is, at that point, I don't blame her. Because
right.
We have $61,000 in the bank at that point. I mean, that's a good amount of money split between 3 people. I don't know that I would have done differently in her position. That is objectively the right thing to do.
I would agree with that sentiment as well. I mean, from a third player perspective, the extra step in the final chase is very valuable. And then you get to the final chase. Did their buzzers not work?
They weren't buzzing in. And there was a point where I realized that if I don't know the answer, they are damn well not going to know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
So what I better do is, if I identify a piece of information in the question that I know I don't know, I'm going to hit the button and say pass. We're going to get it out of the way.
Exactly my same strategy.
Because one of the things that I think I bring to the table, or at least I brought to the table then, I think I do now to a certain degree, I can listen quickly. I can quickly hear a question and identify what information they're looking for. So the time that's spent reading the question to which I don't know the answer, I'm going to make up for it when she says, what what Italian brand of scooter? Boom, Vespa. I'm going to make up for it.
Good. Yeah, that's like a quiz bowl thing. You can anticipate.
Right. Like, what animated movie featuring Seth MacFarlane? Ted. And you know what I mean? And right. It'll average out. It didn't really work out that way, although I think I did better. I think I did better than I would have had I not done that.
Yes, agreed. I think I really wish it was just you in the final chase. I think it would have been far more interesting. You still would have gotten your ass handed to you.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure I would, but I think it would have been more exciting. I think
it would have been way more exciting.
Molly didn't get anything right, and Aaron got 1 right about sourdough bread, and I got all the other correct answers.
All her little degrees. I'm like, this is how you know we're best friends. I'm still mad at her.
I know. You are angrier at her than I have ever been. Mm-hmm. This is a decade later.
Oh, this is why I will also, like, I have a very large plan of going to Hollywood, selling a TV format, and then bringing Zachary Levi in to interview for host, and then berating him for half an hour because of what he did to Bob Hague.
That's right. How you not know what a hotel is, man?
So, Price is Right, L. Millionaire, L. The Chase, L. Match Game, L.
So we're calling all of these L's.
They're not really losses. These are L.
Bring home $15,000 from one of them. Yeah, I brought home a sofa from the other one.
These are losses in that the same way Plinko has never been won.
Yeah, because nobody's gotten 10,000 5 times in a row.
Exactly. No one has won the top prize on Plinko, and you have not won the top prize on any of these shows either.
Similarly, you have not won the top prize on anything you've done.
Exactly. See? So we're getting through this.
You know the way like when Plinko, you know how people like, you know, they win but they don't win. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
but with your life.
You also fall down a pegboard and try to do the best you can.
That's every day of my life. Plinko is a synonym for life.
And that's art, baby.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's talk about Let's Ask America. Let's Ask America is I think at this point it was a show that was ahead of its time. How did Let's Ask America properly prepare you for the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, I'll tell you this. I got an email from their casting people. That was the first time I had ever been reached out to audition for a show. Typically, you know, you put your info out there, you hope they call you back. They got in touch with me. They said, fill out the application and we'll see what we can do. And I filled it out, and I remember taking my time filling it out. And I went I went hard filling out this application, and they emailed back and they said, this is the most intense application we've ever read. Are you free for a Skype call today?
Oh, wow.
And I said, oh, yeah. And so I did the thing, and it was very smooth. The whole process was smooth. And I just felt like, you know, I knew what to say. I knew how to present myself. I knew, you know, I saw from what I've seen of the show that every contestant had a sort of visual hook. At that point, I had 200 board games in my living room. So I knew what my background was going to be. I had stacked all the games up, and I propped up my computer on a footstool and sat on the floor, and I just had a backdrop of board games. And I knew that would give them something to talk about. That would give them a visual hook. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, they put me on the show, and in preparation, they mailed me a box, and the box was a bunch of answer cards with their logo, blank answer cards.
Sure.
A couple of markers, an Ethernet cable, like a travel cup for like water with their logo on it. It was like a lot of cool stuff. Yeah. And in that way, yeah, they really prepared me to be a contestant from home. It was, like you said, very ahead of its time.
Yeah. That's really, like, I don't think that Let's Ask America gets enough credit for what they were able to do, because they did it 2, 3, 4, 10 years before they had to.
They did. And what they got right was that the game was simple.
Yeah.
They knew they had enough going on with 4 people of varying internet connection speeds playing a game on television. So they knew that whatever game they had to, whatever game they were going to play had to be simple. They already had enough on their plate. There have been other interactive games where there's too much going on. Like Paranoia. Remember Paranoia?
Oh, yeah. I loved Paranoia.
Oh, God, it was an amazing show. Yeah. With like a virtual reality set, and they had like 12 audience players, and they were giving out computers, and people were playing along at home. Like, it was too much.
It was way too much.
Yeah, Let's Ask America got it right because it was simple, I think.
And you lost there, too. You were like the final 2.
Yeah, it really came down to it.
Your opponent beat you. Your opponent, like, just squeaked ahead.
Yeah, the question that I lost on was it was a survey question. They asked like 100 cheerleaders, who would you rather date? Would it be the player or the mascot?
And what did you say?
I said a player because I had no faith in society. That was my reasoning. I said you're asking a bunch of regular ass people, they're going to give a regular ass answer. Yeah, we'll date the player.
That's logical. I would have said the same thing.
But something in my head should have kicked in and said, well, these people are going to want to seem like they're, they're really, really nice and progressive and stuff. So, but it was honestly close. I think it was maybe like 2 percentage points off or something like that. But
it was a squeaker.
Yeah, it was for sure.
So, Millionaire, L. Price is Right, L. The Chase, L. Match Game, L. Let's Ask America, L.
This is what it's going to sound like when I get to the gates of heaven. St. Peter, Millionaire, L. Price, L. Chase, L.
But then the pearly gates will open, and God will announce to you, let's talk about Hip Hop Square.
Yes. So,
honestly, like, this is, to be frank, I truly believe that I'm very, very happy that you were on Hip Hop Squares and that you won Hip Hop Squares for a number of reasons, most of them being, I feel like that studio is one of the things that I would have an AI generate as your happy place?
Oh, it was incredible.
Like,
It was incredible. I didn't realize how hard they went until we got there.
okay.
You know, because so that was another one where I got a call.
Mm-hmm.
No, did I get a call about that one? No, I heard about it and I called them. It was a company called Onset that I don't even think is operational anymore, but they typically do audience. You know,
Yeah.
if there's something in New York that needs people to be in the background, People's Court they used to do.
Right.
But they were doing contestant casting for Hip Hop Squares, and they had and they had not announced the show yet. I just saw the casting thing. So I called them and I set up an interview, and the interview / audition took place in the back room of a restaurant in Brooklyn.
That sounds right.
Yeah, so there was a camera, there was a whiteboard with a tic-tac-toe grid on it. They had me talk about myself, and then we played a very rudimentary game where he asked a question and gave an answer. I had to agree or disagree, and if I got it right, I put my X, and I just had to get tic-tac-toe against myself. That was the audition, and I was out apple picking a couple months later, and I got the call that they wanted me in New York. And this was like, I don't want to say it didn't feel like a big deal because I was excited to do it. But at this point, I think I was already sort of used to the process that I was like, oh yeah, no big deal, going to New York, whatever, you know. Also because it's, it's a simple train ride into the city and they pick you up in a van and they do the thing. I just, I'm very familiar with New York. I went to acting school for a couple of years in New York, and that's where my family's from. So, it was exciting, but I also kind of knew what to expect. So I wasn't like, I wasn't Price's Right level of excited about it.
Yeah.
That was until I got there. And I realized that a lot of these people who make music that I love were there. Biz Marquee, Fat Joe, just like all these like unbelievable DJ Khaled, like all these unbelievably cool people were like there in front of me. And they did the set like, life size, like the original Hollywood Squares. It must have been about 30 feet high.
Wow.
And yeah, it was incredible. It was so big that I could not take all of it in from where I was standing. It was that big.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so one of my favorite stories is this poor girl who you played against.
Sandy. Oh, Sandy.
Who just, I mean, we're very empathetic because we know what it's like under the lights. And you were under the lights on your favorite game show, The Price is Right, and you beefed it. And but I think she might have beefed it more with a more kind of instinctual game. Tell us what happened to her.
So I played Hip Hop Squares, which was a modernized reboot of Hollywood Squares. They had done it more recently, but more recently it was celebrities playing against other celebrities, and there were celebrities in the thing. It was kind of played for laughs. This was on MTV2 in 2012, and it was Hollywood Squares. They played it with regular contestants and celebrities in the squares, and they played for money. And the host was a guy named Peter Rosenberg, who's a DJ on Hot 97, who I actually worked with a couple years prior on a pilot for a hip hop trivia game show that taped under the Brooklyn Bridge. He was the host for that. It took place in a boxing ring under the Brooklyn Bridge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But anyway, so I played Hip Hop Squares against this woman named Sandy. Sandy was a model, and she had just modeled for, I want to say it was Evelyn's or Modell's or somebody's ad campaign, some New York area sportswear stores ad campaign.
Okay.
And she was so nice. She was unbelievably nice. And I got a hint of the difficulty when we were filling out our paperwork backstage before the show. Everyone had to write down what shows they had been on in the past, if any. Mm-hmm. And she said, write down like all the shows I've been on or like all the things I've been on. He said, yes. Is it a lot? She said, yeah, I'm a model. So yeah. And she said, yeah, unfortunately you do have to write every credit that you have. And said, okay. Well, do I have to write like all of them? And he said, yes, you have to write every credit, everything that you can be identified in that's been in media, you need to write it. Okay. Well, can I just like write my website? Because like you could like go and see it there. and the guy, the legal guy turned to her and said, "Put your eyes on my eyes. I need you to write everything you've been in." And so we get to the set, and it turns out I'm playing against her. I'm X and she's O. So Hollywood Squares is tic-tac-toe, essentially, and it's, you have to decide if the stars are giving a correct answer or if they're bluffing. And essentially it's tic-tac-toe. You still follow those base rules. So you want to block wherever possible, and you want to get your 3 in a row wherever possible. The center square strategically has a little more value than the other ones, whatever. So I have 2 X's kind of flanking the left side. I'm getting ready to get 3 vertical, and the top corner, I want to say it was empty. So it's her turn. Now, according to the rules of tic-tac-toe, the strategy, you want to pick that corner and block me. She didn't do that. She picked something else. And everyone kind of laughed. She kind of laughed, because everybody, I think it was like Lil Duval was a comedian. He said, "Girl, you don't see that? You don't see them 2 X's over there?" And everyone laughed, whatever. The next game, it happens again. I have 2 X's in a row, and she goes somewhere completely different. And then she says, "Oh no, can I change it?" And everyone laughs. And and he says, "No, you can't change it." Ha ha ha. The host, says that. And then she says, No, I really want to change it. And the host, Peter Rosenberg, he takes on a more serious tone, and he says, "Unfortunately, no, I was very serious when I said you couldn't change your choice once you say it out loud. We do have to go with what you picked." Oof. And she started bawling. Oh. She started sobbing uncontrollably, and they had to stop down for about 10 or 15 minutes to calm her down. And I was just standing there. I knew I didn't want to embarrass her further.
Sure.
And so I just kind of stood there. They turned the music on in the studio. The audience is dancing and kind of looking up and wondering what's happening with her. And contestant coordinator comes and talks to her. And then we pick back up, and she goes with her original choice.
Right. Still has to. Yeah.
Right. She doesn't change it. And I win the game. And it was $500 a game on Hip Hop Square. So $1,000 for, it was I don't want to be boisterous or no.
Sure.
Facetious. It was the easiest money I've ever made on TV.
Excellent.
Yeah. And it paid for the date with the woman who I've now been married to it'll be 6 years this Saturday.
Oh. So really, your one game show win was the best win of all.
It sure was. Man, you know how to end a podcast.
Right?
It really was. That, it's the strength that I get from being in a loving and validating relationship has enabled a lot of cool things to happen in my life. Meeting Bob Bowden is great, and doing the chase and all that was great. And the museum stuff was great. I don't think it would have happened if I didn't have a woman here who loves me the way that she does. So that, I would agree with you. The win was a win.
And I just want to say, I'm personally really honored that I can even be your friend, let alone one of your best friends. Creative consultant, partner, whatever people want to designate our friendship as. I am honored completely to be able to just vibe with my best friend. And so 1, thank you. 2, happy April Fool's Day. And 3, we should keep talking about this, but later. And maybe you get to ask the questions. What do you say?
That's a wonderful idea. What are you doing this summer?
I'm going to go host the 24-hour game show marathon in support of Child's Play.
Oh, I think I'm signed up for that too. Okay,
Sweet.
Let's do something around then.
Let's do that. That sounds good.
Sounds like a plan. I'm putting my hand out towards the camera, even though my camera's off. This is a handshake. Cool. All right.
Tell us about yourself. Conversations with Game Show Contestants is hosted, edited, and produced by me, Christian Carrion, from my studio in beautiful downtown Lancaster City, Pennsylvania. Co-executive producer, Cory Anotado. This has been a production of BuzzerBlog, the most popular website
for game shows in the world.
Most popular website in the world.
Eat your heart out, Google. In partnership with the National Archives of Game Show History at the Strong Museum of Play in Rochester, New York. For more information, visit museumofplay.org. Thank you so much for listening. He's Christian Carrion. Good night.
Good night. Yay!
Yay!
That was awesome. All right, where's the end button here? Tell us about yourself. Conversations with Game Show Contestants is produced in partnership with the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York, one of the largest history museums in the United States and one of the leading museums serving families with highly interactive exhibits and programs. Since 1968, the Strong Museum has been dedicated to exploring the ways in which play encourages learning, creativity, and discovery, and how it illuminates cultural history. And their National Archives of Game Show History. Founded by industry veterans Bob Bowden and Howard Blumenthal, the archive is home to thousands of artifacts representing over 80 years of broadcasting, including props, set designs, video interviews with game show professionals, and other iconic elements from the history of television at play. For more information about the National Archives of Game Show History or the Strong National Museum of Play, visit museumofplay.org or call area code 585-263-2700.